You're tuned into 9 to 5 Work Rebels with your host, Ebony Gale. This series is sponsored by the PRCA's Race and Ethnicity Equity Board. To learn more about REEB and its mentoring scheme, visit prca.org.uk/REEB.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Gemmed in Comms Series Special, brought to you by 9 to 5 Work Rebels. I am your host, Ebony Gale, and today I'm really excited because I have a special guest with me, Shanice Hoo Mills, who is the founder and CEO of Kallure. Now, Kallure is a integrated PR and communications agency, and she specializes in culture, lifestyle, and technology. And she's here to share her journey with me into PR and comms. So now, thank you for Shanice for joining me today. I am excited to have you on and for you to be able to share your journey with us today.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, Ebony.
You are most welcome. So just as a bit of a background about this podcast, essentially, I created this podcast series special to give people like you, their flowers for carving out, a great career for yourselves, essentially, and people of color who are doing great things in the industry. Because, a lot of the times we hear about the industry being sort of like 91, 92% white. And, they throw around statistics quite a lot, which, it's PR, we are used to using statistics. However, for me, I was really passionate about putting the faces to the statistics, because we're not just statistics, we're people with stories, and maybe people can actually learn from that. But also a safe space for us to just have a talk about things that we've experienced, on our journey. So thank you again, and flowers to you, of course, for doing what you're doing.
Thank you.
Now, as we get started, of course, I always like you to tell us, about yourself. So can you tell us about yourself and what it is that you do? And then you can also add in, whether you've always wanted to work in this industry.
So, as you put it beautifully, I run a 360 communications agency that specializes across culture, lifestyle, and tech. Primarily, we provide services across PR, strategy, campaigns, D&I, and brand partnerships. And we also offer bespoke services where we can do a combination of all of those services mentioned above. In terms of who I am a mother. I'd like to put that out first, because that is what keeps me grounded in all that I do. And followed by a businesswoman, a small business owner, because we are a small agency. Along with myself, I've got 3 other members in the team. So yeah, we're quite a small agency, but yeah, I love what I do and I'm happy to be in this space.
Oh, amazing. And so what attracted you to the comms industry? Did you always want to do sort of PR, or did you kind of like fall into it?
Do you know what? In all honesty, I fell into PR accidentally. So when I was 17, we're taking it back. When I was 17, I started putting on events with 3 of my friends. Shout out to Sam, Jules, and Femi. So we ended up putting shows together with Link Up TV. This was when Link Up TV was actually first starting the platform. Yeah. And we used to put on music events in Camden Lock for underrepresented music talent. Yeah. And somebody said to me, Shan, you should be in comms. Like you could be a comms manager or PR. Like you're really good at this, because I was the person that would liaise with the artist managers, with the artists, make sure everybody's cool on the day, putting it out there, making sure everybody knows, how they're being conveyed. But I just loved it, and it kind of came to me naturally. And I'm a little bit of a chatty patty, so I really chat and get on with anybody, really. Like I can have a good conversation with anyone. So everyone was just like, yeah, you're a PR girl. But again, I kind of like pushed it to the back of my mind and thought, not really, because I always associated PR with celebrities. And I was just like, yeah, I'm not really interested in that. So I don't really see that working for me. Now, what happened was, years later, as you go through your journey, I went through college and university, and I was a little bit confused about my career path and the direction I wanted to go in. So I done a combined degree, a bit of mixture of it all. which also included media and journalism. So I thought, do you know what? I want to, like, my aspiration. Okay, I decided maybe leave the entertainment, because at one point I wanted to be, I think we wanted to be something, didn't we? We changed what we wanted to be. I wanted to be this international singer. So I was just like, okay, maybe then I wanted to be a fashion designer. So I was just like, because I'm quite creative, and I was just like, maybe that's the route I need to go down. So I started, like, you know, I've always drawn and painted, and I thought, okay, maybe that's the direction. Because I couldn't decide, I thought, let me just do a combined degree, a bit of everything, and maybe at the end I will decide. So I've done a number of different internships at, like, magazines. I interned over at Notion magazine, the Northern Shell Group when they own Channel 5. So I was able to be exposed to the different elements of kind of the communication space. But again, it was more the journalism side of it. So after that, I finished my degree, and it was just like, wow, there was no jobs. And all I kept hearing was, you need more experience, because I was applying for all these different roles. Some, looking back now, like, what was you even thinking? Like me in recruitment, I applied for I was applying for anything, because I had finished university and I was just like, I need a job.
Yeah.
Now, tragedy came. I lost a really, really good friend. And when he passed away, I got heavily involved in basically pushing to continue his legacy and what it was that he was trying to do at the time. During that process, I ended up connecting with the editor of Evening Standard, who then went on to introduce me to the CEO of LCF, and then also the head of public affairs and community. So there was two different women they were quite senior over at Citibank. To my knowest knowledge, I was there to present, basically I had written up this proposal to present to gain funding for the area of which I grew up in, so that they could open up a facility to ultimately help young people within that area. So that was the activist element of me kind of coming through. And I fell into this, like I said, all accidentally, all off by passion. And the campaigns editor reached out to me, and he said, Shanice, Jenny Gray would like to meet you. So I was just like, Jenny Gray, she's the head of, she was head of public affairs EMEA at the time, for Citibank. And he said that she was really impressed, you know, with, you know, your delivery and how you spoke, and, you know, how you came across. And she was really impressed with the fact that, you know, you had written, you know, this proposal up. She would love to invite you down, XYZ. So I ended up going to Canary Wharf, again, questioning my entire life, because at this point I was thinking, why is there no work? What is going on? Why did I get a degree? So all these different questions, like, why did I even go to university? What was the point of this? I got to Canary Wharf, was invited into Jenny's office, and I just remember her saying, I would love to mentor you. And I was like, me? And she was like, yeah, I'd love to mentor you. Have you ever considered a career in comms and PR? And I was just like, huh? This little lovely white lady wants to mentor me, little Miss Shanice from Brixton. And I remember her saying, no, like the way she turned and said to me, no, I've just simply opened the door. You've made this opportunity happen.
Absolutely.
It's all been you, basically. And I was just like, wow. So she was just like, on top of that, I'd love to offer you a position here within the public affairs team in a graduate role. I said,
amazing.
Oh my gosh. So yeah, I was so happy, so humbled. And then, yeah, that's how my career started. I ended up starting at Citibank, working in the EMEA team as a graduate public affairs officer. And I learned so much.
Story. It's a lovely story.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah, so that's intercoms.
Yeah, that's kind of cool though, because you literally fell in there. Like you obviously were supposed to be in there based on the work you was doing, but for you to be doing something activist wise, you know, on the back of tragedy, which I'm really sorry to hear about, but something beautiful came out of it. Do you know what I mean? Like you trying to do something great, which is beautiful, but then also because you were trying to do something so great for other people, you end up getting a blessing for yourself. Like I love that. Okay, I'm very much into that kind of, you know, energy and all that kind of stuff. So I'm like, this is lovely. I just love that. I think that's an amazing story. I really like that.
You know, when you wasn't actually, like, my intention when I got involved with everything that I did within my old area, I had no intention of gaining anything. I genuinely done it because I wanted change. So for this to come out of it was like, wow, like it was a 360 moment for me.
Absolutely. And also it just gives you that, it reminds you of that saying about no good deed. Do you know what I mean? Like you've done a good deed in terms of trying to do something great, and then you actually got your blessing back anyway. So
Yeah,
working for Citibank in their public affairs team must have been interesting, because I've touched on a bit of public affairs work. And that must have been interesting because obviously then you're dealing with the parliamentary side of communication. So where did you move from there? So did you kind of want to go away from the parliamentary side and get a bit more into the creative side? Like obviously you started in the bank, so I'm like, how did you get from banking to now having your own setup? And obviously you were doing bits before that, you said in music and stuff, you've got the creative background, which makes sense.
yeah.
You coming back full circle to creativity. So yeah, tell us a little bit about that.
So I think, do you know what it is? I think for me, I loved corporate because it taught me so much, just in terms of in terms of like a business operational kind of standpoint of how business works and what's important and significant. And my time in the corporate world, I would never take back. But ultimately, I think what kind of led me on this journey was after Citibank, I ended up applying for TBF, because I was introduced to Anne, who was the chairwoman at the time for TBF Foundation, Taylor Bennett Foundation. I applied, I got onto there. From there, I went on to Vodafone. So I was working for Vodafone. From Vodafone, went over to agency, which was a bit more creative, which more like, you know, it's not as like in-house. So I was exposed to that. Then went back to Vodafone. And then from there, I had my daughter. Everything shifted for me. And there was when, you know, I think every mother has hit this point. When you have a child, you question your whole life. It's like, am I making the right choices? Is this sustainable? How could I be a present mother? How do I still pursue my career? So I was going through all these different questions. But while I was always working in corporate or working in agency or in-house, I always had an element of freelancing or doing bits and pieces on the side. So that was always something. So for example, I worked on the launch of Wave magazine. I worked on another campaign with Evening Standard. This was all while I was still working for an organization. So I always kind of kept those connections and relationships, because I'm a relationships person, and I'm a person that is all about authenticity. So I have to feel the energy. I have to know that this is the real deal, and I will maintain those relationships. So I did that. And it was during my time when I had my daughter. Again, a lot of changes were transpiring over at Vodafone. And I felt like I didn't want to go back, and it was going to be a complete shock for me, but I still wanted to be present in my career and not just completely stop. And so what I did was start freelancing, and I ended up working for this lady called Julia Hodsbaum. And she would actually be credited as the world's first network professor in terms of social networks and the power of networks.
Cool.
And so I met her through my days at Vodafone. Again, we maintained a good relationship. And I just said to her, look, I've just had she was actually one of the first people I told I was pregnant, because I was freelancing for her. And one day I came to her house and I started throwing up. And she was like, what's wrong? And I said, oh, Julia, pregnant, but nobody knows. And she was like, oh, don't be silly, don't worry, it's fine. Da, 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 da. So it was from there, she really encouraged me. She really, you know, she always says that I wasn't a mentor, I'm a friend, but she really did mentor me in many, many different ways. You know, just as a small business owner, as a woman in the space, because her background was PR, but then she kind of branched out more into kind of networks and, you know, and membership club. And she kind of branched out away from PR, but that was her background, PR and like journalism. And so being able to work with her, I was really exposed to how to operate a smaller business. And then it was during that process when I was freelancing for her, I was launching a project, which was backed by Google for her. And I remember at the time, one of my friends said, Shan, I see how happy you are when you're doing this stuff. Why don't you just do this like for yourself full time? And I'm just like, oh, I don't know about that. Because I just always was just like a freelancer. And I always envisioned I worked for a company for years. And then when I was about 45, and I've decided I've had enough, I'll go set up my own thing, because I would have been established and accomplished, and people could take me seriously because I'm older. because I just felt like you're young, people would kind of see like, oh, you need more experience, you need this. But then I realized that no, that's actually not the case, because there's people starting businesses at 15. So I was just like, do you know what? Let me just go for it. So I incorporated Kallure in 2019. And then I was working, like I said, on that project for Julia under my company. But then COVID came. And so, yeah, it just led me on a path of challenges, but great challenges, because now I'm here.
Good. Well, that's great, though. That's amazing. I love that. I love that for you. That's cool. A really interesting trajectory, and one where which I like about your story, is that you had people that have been quite supportive on your journey. I think that's so nice as well. That's brilliant.
No, honestly, it's important. I say to everybody entering into any industry, whether you're in PR or you're not, you need to seek mentors and people. I always say the little village, because my grandma had this saying when I was growing up, it takes a village to raise a child. Like, you know, everybody has to come together. And I feel like when you find the people in your village that genuinely care, you know, like till this day, the guys who I started doing events with when I was 17, I'm still friends with them now. They've all gone on to do their own things and doing really well respectively in all their fields. And you know, it's lifelong relationships, and you have this, you know, community that really support and care and support you. So I think it's really, really important. And I always shout out Jenny, Julia, Matt. There's been so many, Amanda, Devon. There's been so many people that have taken their time out. Sarita, there's so many who have taken their time out, who have counseled me, who have given me words of wisdom, encouragement, pulled me up. Juanita, another one. There's just so many people that I could call upon that are in this industry that are very senior, who have taken their time out and given me that grace, is what I call it. So I appreciate it.
I think that's lovely. I love that. I love hearing that. So no, thank you for that. But even your comment about the village, I thought was interesting, because, you know, my grandparents are Jamaican as well. So it's something that I heard quite a lot growing up. And I think it's really important that you acknowledge people that have helped you, but also have that mindset that's helped you propel you forward. So I think that's really, really interesting. So on the lived experience type of things, I always go into this section, which I find really, really interesting, because we're delving a little bit deeper now. So one of the questions I always ask is, when did you become aware of your ethnicity? Now, I'm not saying you don't know the color of skin you're born into, because I know, you know, as a Black girl, but I mean from the outside world. So for me, besides seeing, you know, certain movies that you'd hear about and hearing about things happening, for me, one of the real times that hit me was when I just started secondary school. So I was 11 years old then. And then I started hearing about what you would call the Chelsea Smilers. And they were very, very well known racist white thugs that would go and they'd target any Black, brown person. They'd have like a razor and they'd cut you across your face, and that would be known as the Chelsea Smile, right? So I heard about that, and obviously there's also like lots of like BNP were doing like walks up and down in certain areas in South London, and it became much more, as a young girl, I was a bit more like, oh, okay, I'm very, very aware of this now, to the point where I'm, you know, heading to school like head on a swivel, just feeling a little bit nervous because I'm hearing about all these Chelsea Smilers. So I know everyone's got different experiences. So what was it for you?
Wow. You know, like I'm sitting here just going through a time warp of like my life and all the different experiences I've had. But I think the early, I grew up around a family that was very Black and proud. Let's put it that way. So I grew up, I always say this as a mixture of Black Panthers, devout Christians, and Rastas. So you can just imagine that pot of mixture growing up. So my parents who raised me, they were devout Christians, but then I had aunties and uncles that were like giving me books at 9 years old called The Last Black Mecca. So it was just like, okay, like I was really exposed to quite a lot from an early age. But I think when I realized my Blackness was when I think I was about 7 or 8. And I remember I was with my auntie and my sister would always say, like, tell me, like, you know, you're Black. That it was like something that was reinforced to me, like who we are, where we come from. And I remember, because I was still quite little, and I remember us walking down near Five Ways. This is a place in Brixton.
I know Five Ways.
But her saying, you're Black, and we were talking about the idea of what is being Black. And I've always been like, I would say it was like a disillusion, because it was like, for me, is black even a color? Like, in the sense of, is race even real to me? Because as a child, I didn't see no race as a kid growing up. It was just like, okay, you knew this person was from Africa, or this person was from, Pakistan. I had, like, my primary school was very, very mixed. Like, we had everybody and everyone there. So it was just like, race wasn't at the forefront of like my mind, if that makes sense. And it's not until I got to about 7 or 8, I started to realize that this was an actual thing. For example, like, one of the kids in school, there was like this kid in class, I won't say his name, but he was of white heritage. And I remember one of the other kids who was of color was like, they're dirty, something along them lines, because he was somebody that used to come to school and he really smelled a lot, really badly. Hygiene was no good. But again, as an adult now, looking back, he was neglected as a child. He wasn't being taken care of properly, and all those different kind of social economics played a role into that. But again, that was where the first kind of light bulb. Oh wow, because it was kind of like, they're different from us. Like, we're clean, they're dirty. And I was just like, okay, that was quite radical. But again, these are my friends. I'm not really, like, again, thinking of it. But because of how my grandma raised me, I we had white neighbors, we had black neighbors. She treated them all the same. My grandma wasn't like, you don't treat them any differently because they're white. And even if we were subjugated to abuse, don't do what they do. Do you get what I mean? So I remember about 8 years old, and this is when it really hit me that this race is real. This is a real thing, and that I'm starting to grow up and understand my blackness. I remember one day my granddad coming home, because he used to work an early job, so he'd be out like early in the morning, before like 4 in the morning. He had like one of those early morning jobs that he had to go to. And I remember him coming back home, and I was a bit confused at why he had come back home so quick, because he had just left, kind of thing. Anyway, he was covered in egg, like covered in egg. My granddad was covered in egg. And this is a man who used to wear his top hat, ironed down, ironed his socks and boxers. He was very meticulous, not a button missing on his shirt. That was my granddad. Always had a shirt and nice tailored pants on, smart man. And I just saw him covered in egg. And I remember him coming in, and I said, Granddad, what happened? Like, because I was really close to my granddad. So I was so confused. And he said, oh, don't worry about it, Shani. Some boys, them just dash egg off for me and rare. So I didn't think nothing of it. But I overheard the conversation now he was having with my grandma. And he basically was saying, oh, these white guys, basically they were like white young guys. He was on his way walking, and they just was basically calling him hurling abuse, and they've basically chucked egg and stuff all over him and stuff. So that's why he's had to come back home. And that was my first, like, I was angry. Like, I was like, even thinking about it's getting me emotional, but I was angry because I was thinking, what is wrong with people? Like, are people mad? Are like people animals? Like, what is actually going on in this world? And then it was like reoccurring things. So like my sister, she was one of my oldest sisters. She's about 10 years older than me. So she had like just started driving, and there was a period she was in Bermondsey, and she went to the petrol station. And again, overhearing these conversations, she's come back. She's literally had to run for her life, get into her car and drive, because basically they were going to attack her. And that's when I realized, wow, we're black. Like, this is a thing. We're black, and there's people in this world that just hate us because of the color of our skin, and it's really sad. And it almost felt like my innocence as a child started to rip away from me. And I realized that now, like, do I have to be mean? Do I have to be horrible to these people? Like, they don't like us. And it was just, that is literally, and it was my grandma. And this is why I say, like, my grandma, I love that woman, God rest her soul in peace, so much, because she taught me so much. I'm even getting emotional. I need a minute.
Great.
She always talked about forgiveness and just treating people with kindness. And I think that was the Christian in her. So she always, no matter what, however they treat us, you don't do it back, because 2 wrongs don't make a right.
Yeah.
And it was something that I internally battled, because it was just kind of like, but I'm angry because why do they keep thinking they can do these things? It's not okay. And then, but then it's like, I had really nice white neighbors that wasn't like that. So it's just like, it was so conflicting. It was a time, I'm a crier, by the way. I think everybody that knows me, I'm quite emotional, but I was just like looking back at that experience, that the things that we've had to endure, and just like hearing the stories of when my grandparents came down, like my mom growing up in the 60s, what they've had to experience, it hurt. And
Absolutely.
it was just like, you've come over and you've given so much to a country that still doesn't love you. And it's painful because you see the psychological, I call it the psychological entrapment that it's done to the Black communities, where they've passed down trauma to trauma, and we never spoke about it because we've never actually, like, with the adults in my family. Obviously now as an adult, I have conversations with my aunts and my uncles and whatnot, but as a kid or as a teenager, no one really spoke about it. It was almost like it was the unspoken thing we all knew. I was always told to be Black and proud. I would always overhear conversations. I was given books, or you'd hear something, along the lines of, why you should be proud of your heritage and who you are. But it was never spoken about, like, the experiences, the pain, the suffering, the trauma, how they overcame it, the different kind of things that they faced. No one ever really spoke about it. So it's like we knew these things happened, but it was just brushed under the rug. And it was just like, be strong. You got to work 2 times harder. You got to keep your head down. Don't get involved in too much. Don't talk up too much with them. That I was told all these things, but there was no context to why.
Right. Okay. I think that's really interesting, actually, because obviously I feel like you're a bit younger than me, so the context, I get it, because I feel like what has people deal with it, particularly that age group. You talk about the grandparents, like, I can relate to all of that. My mum's side was very much like that, very much, like, treat people how you want to be treated. She was very much like, a village, and she had neighbors that were white and different colors, and the kids would come out, because she's a chef, used to make pancakes, the kids would come over and she'd feed them, like. And so it is perplexing as you're growing up and you're seeing all this kind of juxtaposition where it's just like, well, hold on a minute, in one sense you've got your grandmother who's been this lovely lady to everybody, and you've got your granddad coming after being attacked like that. Just like one of my uncles always tells me about him getting chased down Oakham Road by a bunch of skinheads, and like they were carrying blades and things like that. So I've heard lots and lots and lots of stories about it. And growing up, I do feel like they tried to not let us know things, but just tried to tell us to work 3 times harder. You're Black, you've got to work 3 times harder. Remember that. And if this happens, try not to do that. Try not to do that. And I feel like at a certain point, our ancestors, as in, the grandparents and things like that, they were more like, let's try and get along and not ruffle any feathers. Whereas what I like about, I suppose, the youth coming up now, everyone's a bit more like, well, no, we're not having it, and forget.
Yeah, but I was always that kid though. So I was that injustice. I want to go beat up the boys that got my granddad. Where are they?
But I hear you. I would be the same. I hear you, because it's so upsetting to know that you've got your granddad, and I know what you mean, because especially that generation of people, they dress sharp. What do you mean? Everything is pressed, clean, smart. Like, they don't step out unless they look good and they feel good. That's why even like my uncles always talk about how a lot of the white guys used to work with be like, oh my gosh, they started dressing like them, because they were like, you guys dress really nice. So I get it, but it's just that it's something that I think is really interesting as we get into it, because like you said, most generations are being affected by what has happened. And then I think about my grandparents, I think, well, imagine the trauma that they're carrying from their parents and the ones that came before them. It does definitely come back down to us. But yeah, I think that's interesting that you became aware of it then. So I'm going to move you on to back into the workplace, right? Have you ever felt like your race, ethnicity has held you back in your career? And to follow that, have you ever witnessed or experienced racism or witnessed racism in the workplace? And if so, how was that handled?
To the first question, I try not to, of course, there's adversaries, and I do feel, of course, there's the invisible glass ceiling that I say all Black women face that nobody wants to talk about in the UK, where it's like you see your peers rise up the ranks a lot quicker than you, but you also know that you have the capabilities to do so. But it was actually a Black woman who was quite senior in the industry that said to me once, like, don't look through that lens. Even if they do that, even if you feel it, don't look through that lens. Because the moment you start looking through that lens of, I'm being held back because of my color, you're subjugating yourself to the ideologies that have been fed to us for a very long time. And so I don't feed into it, because I'm like, how could I allow that to hold me back? because you basically decided because of the color of my skin, I don't deserve to continue to keep growing and keep going. And of course, we do face adversaries. Of course, we're often overlooked. And even within the Black communities, what they've done to us in terms of the ideology of shades of skin and the different tones of Blackness and the separation and colorism and how all of these things. So I've seen it all, but I try not to look through that lens, because I know once I start going down, I call it the rabbit hole, I get angry, and then I might come across really too passionate, and then I might be too Black for all of these institutions. No, I'm joking. No. In the reality, I just think for me, I try not to look through that lens. I try not to look at it as it's something holding me back. I see it as it's a power, because I have an outview, a look that you guys don't have, and I can help you to communicate to people that you don't understand. And even within the Black community, there is so many different cultures within the Black community. We're not all the same either. So again, it would be able to provide an outlook. So I never look at it as an obstructive thing. I look at it as a superpower for me personally.
I think that's good. I think that's really good. The reason why I always throw that question in is because, for example, myself, I worked at General Medical Council for a number of years. So I was in-house comms, and there was obviously dealing with lots of high-profile doctors and things like that. But I experienced racism even by one of the doctors on the phone who called up was speaking to me. I was helping him with a query, right? And by the time I wrapped up, he was like, "Oh, what's your name?" Blah blah blah. So I said, "Oh, my name's Ebony." The man said, "Ebony, are you coloured? You know, you sound so professional. Oh my gosh!" You know, this was his whole thing was just like, "Oh, because I can speak and I can help him with his query, and I've been really helpful." Somehow he was absolutely mind blown that this was a Black woman on the phone, right? So I've had little experiences where, again, it's one of that experience. I did flag it because, you know, people around me were like, "Oh, what happened there?" And then they were like explaining that, "Oh no, that's unacceptable," which is good. So I'm saying in those sort of situations, it was a case of it was just the experience of it. I've never necessarily let myself be held back, because my mindset has always been, if I can't move up where I'm at, then move out. And
I'll keep it moving. Yeah, that's my attitude. Like I'm just like, do you know what? And going back to that, you know, have I experienced racism, discrimination, and all of the above? Of course I have. I've seen it as well, but I don't play that. So I'm like straight away, is it? Oh, really? So I've seen it. This is even before comms. I've seen it in retail. I won't go into it too much because it's not relevant to the industry we are in now. But I've seen where, I won't say their name, but a luxury retailer, the management at the time, to one of my peers, she had a weave in and her hair kind of got frizzy because it had rained that day and her natural hair got frizzy. And I remember them saying such an inappropriate remark such as, "Oh, you need to decide what kind of hair you're going to have today. Is it going to be frizzy or straight?" And I was just like, whoa, who are they talking to? And I couldn't hold my mouth because I was just absolutely no, because the girl who they said it to was more timid and didn't have outspoken as me.
Yeah.
So I turned around and I said, "I think that's highly inappropriate for you to say that. Should we talk about the fact that your lips are they going to be either moistured or dry?" You know, because I'm just like, no, because what you're not going to do, don't, you know, make people feel uncomfortable who they are. I don't like things like that. So that was that. But going back to the industry, I have, not in the major corps I've been in, but there was a period, there's one place where I worked, and I'd say out of all of my communications experience, it's the one that I least enjoyed, the one that I least liked.
Okay.
I had a lot of personal things going on in my life at the time. Again, we will touch on that later on, but I know, looking back now, I was kind of being bullied, like in the sense of not outright bullied, because no one can bully me outrightly, but it was the subtle kind of, "Oh, we're all going for lunch." Nobody would invite me. They're all going to lunch.
Right.
It was, you know, little things like that. I remember one time being in the office and somebody thought it was appropriate to say, "Oh, so Shanice, could you tell me why is it that a lot of Black people, like a lot within the Black community, a lot of people don't know who their dads are?" So I turned around. Yeah, I've had that, and I turned around and I said, "Really?" I said, "Well, I know who my dad is." So I can't talk on behalf of the Black community, but the people that I know and who I know, we know who our dads are. Do you know who yours is? Because I was so like, how dare you? Like, I wanted to like, oh my gosh, I felt so much anger in that time. But again, it shows growth, because I was just like, wow, like you really just did that.
Unacceptable for someone to say that to you. That's absolutely disgusting. Talk about spreading stereotypes. Like, how dare you? I'm glad you shot her down straight, because who are you talking to? It's unacceptable behavior.
I couldn't believe it. Was actually a guy that said it. It was a whole man that said this. So again, but it's all that the way that they were and the little, you could just, the undertones. Now there was one particular occasion, I did a point, I used to like cry before I would get into this office, or like go to the toilet and sit there and just like sit in the toilet for about 15 minutes, rocking on the toilet, like, why am I doing this? Why am I even in this space? Why am I here? It's the condescending, it's the talking to you like you're stupid, it's do you understand? That type of stuff. And it's just like, really, like, you really want to do this? And I remember there was one occasion, and I feel aside, there was two women in that organization who I felt actually tried to support me when I first entered into the role. Bearing in mind, it's my first time ever working at an agency. So I again was like, I've always been in-house. So this was out of my comfort zone.
Yeah.
And I remember I was looking for something. I was trying to do something on the computer, and I was looking for something. Oh, I'm going to top this story. There's two stories that why I ended up leaving this agency. And I remember sitting, and I said to my peer next to me, I said, oh, like, do you know where this is? Basically, because I was looking for something. Because again, nobody gave me any direction. There was no, this is where everything is. That's where it is. There was no real support. So I said, he turned around and he went, if you don't get it or don't understand what you're doing, just forget it. I'll do it myself. Because it was something that he had asked me to do. Now, I just suddenly was just like, no, enough of this. The cotton picking has ended. So I'm going to have to let you know, sir, that the cotton picking has ended. So I turned around, and I swore I did. I turned around and I said, I don't know who the fuck you are talking to. Sorry for my language. But I would appreciate if you do not talk to me like that, because all I did was simply ask you a question. And if you can't help me, then that's it. But don't talk to me like that. Lo and behold, I was called into a meeting.
Because you swore.
I was called into a meeting about, so the director at the time called me, and lovely woman. She was really, really nice, to be fair to her. She called me and she's like, oh, Shanice, it's come to my attention. It's been reported that some of the staff feel that you're quite aggressive. You come across. I said, let me just stop you right there, right now. Right? It's not some of the staff. I know exactly who is it that reported me. Was it so-and-so behind sitting there, or was it so-and-so there? Because I don't play none of that. And I think everyone's fake here anyway. I said, I will tell you what happened. Yes, I did swear, and I will hold up my hands and I apologize and I take full accountability. But I will tell you, how he spoke to me was unacceptable. I said it's quite funny how they never disclosed what he said to me first, to why I responded in such a manner. Do you get what I mean? I said, furthermore, I don't even want to be in this space, because I just feel like, it's starting to have a detriment to my mental health. Because as far as I'm concerned, like, how dare you try to make out like I'm some bully, that I'm aggressive, that I'm this and I'm that, when half of the time I don't even talk to people here. Like, you guys go for lunch all the time. Nobody invites me. You guys do stuff together. I'm not included. So I don't even understand this. This is crazy. I was so upset. I went home that day because I said, I can't be around any of this. It's toxic. It's a toxic environment, and I'm actually extremely offended. And the guy who me and him had the altercation, I approached him and I said, next time, if you have something to say to me or you feel some type of way, you pull me aside as an adult. But to try and escalate and make it seem as if I've been bullying you or something. And he apologized. He said, Shanice, it wasn't him. He told me who it was that reported me. And he said that person reported me because they're a manager and they felt how I came across was really quite aggressive. And I said, but did they not think how you spoke to me?
It was aggressive. It was extremely aggressive.
right? Because you spoke to me as if I was stupid, as if I was dumb, if I didn't understand anything. I'm sorry, I wouldn't be here if I didn't understand, right? And what even offended me even more was the fact that I studied. I went through a whole degree to do this. I went through education, through internships. I went through a whole program. And the guy who said this all to me, fair plays to him, he didn't have to go through none of that. He in fact didn't even go to university. He got the role because his mum was friends with one of the directors there. So nepotism at its finest.
Massive. Yeah.
And I just said to myself, do you know what? Cool. So from there, I bit my tongue and I said, you know what, I'm going to no more be trying to be nice, because I tried to do this whole be nice, be friendly, be sociable. Let me try and be cool with everybody. And I just said to myself, these people are not for me. So let me just keep myself to myself. Now, the final curtain call, what was just like, I can't do this anymore. I remember calling my sister, crying profusely, like, Tash, I need to quit. I can't, it's making me depressed. Like, I can't work here anymore. We went out for Christmas, and I will never forget this day. We went out for Christmas. And funny enough, there was one of two Black people in our team, and the other young woman who was in the team, she always said to me, like, she don't really go out with them. She's not interested. She doesn't try to be sociable. She keeps it very minimal. She's not interested. And now I understood why. Because she had been there quite some time. There was people who joined after her. They were getting promotions left, right, and center. And yet she was really, really talented, really good at what she did. And again, I was still quite young in my career. So I'm just like learning and navigating how this whole thing works. But she's like, you'll see, basically. So we went out for Christmas dinner. And this is when I realized that, wow, this is a whole real thing. Like, this is actually a real thing in this industry. And they're so unbeknownst, because bless them cotton socks, some of them actually don't even realize that they have these kind of traits and behaviors in them, because the entitlement, they've always had a level of privilege. So they've never understood the struggle of what it really means to even get to this point. So I was in the queue. I remember we went out for Christmas dinner, and then afterwards they were all like, let's go for some more drinks. So I was like, okay, like, because I actually for once felt part of the team. I felt like I was getting on with them. I felt like, oh, this felt nice. And I wanted the momentum to continue. So I remember we went to a place in Shoreditch. We've lined up. Everybody was being let in. My whole team basically got let in, right? And there's me with my big afro. It got to me. And the guys turned around and he said, oh, where's your ID? So I've looked around and I've gone, who, me? Because I'm confused. You just let all my team in.
My colleagues have talked to me about being asked about ID. Yeah,
I've never heard you once ask any of them for ID. Why are you asking me for ID? Oh, I need ID. So I immediately knew what that meant. Like, you are basically
not a place for you.
This is not the place for me, and you're basically saying to me, I'm not going to be let in unless you have my ID. I got really upset. I was just like, sorry, this is like unacceptable. You're racist. And I literally called him out for what he is. I said, you're racist. How dare you? You're asking me for my ID. You haven't asked any of them. So one of my colleagues is coming along, oh, no, Shanice, stop. No, it's fine. You know, like, oh, stop. Just play.
No, I hate all that.
No. Did he ask you for ID? Oh, no. Okay, then. So please be quiet. Thank you. Another security guard who happened to be Black overheard, and he's come walking over. So he said, what's going on, to his colleague? What's the problem? Oh, he gave some bogus answer to why he wanted my ID. So the Black guy who was a security guard turned around and said, look, just let her in. If there's any issues, it's my fault, basically. Just put it on me. And I looked at him and I said, but brother, you shouldn't have to do that. And he said, sis, don't worry about it. Just go in. It's all right, man. Have a good night. And I was so angry. I went into the bathroom to sit down in the cubicle to calm down, because I just felt like so outraged.
Yeah, I'd be upset too. I'd be close to tears, because it's just frustration. It's embarrassing. So, and also, where was your colleagues? Did they come back and check on you? How were you doing?
No, wait, I'm gonna drop the nail bomb on that one.
What? Okay.
So I was in the bathroom. Again, they didn't know I was in the bathroom. And 3 of them come in there and they started talking about me, saying, oh, I don't know why she's making a big thing of it, trying to play the race card. Like, they basically basically was saying that I'm making it into a whole race issue, and Oh my gosh, I was so happy when I opened that door, because if you saw how all their faces went, it was just one of the best feelings I've ever had in my life. I opened the door and I said, "Oh, hi, you okay? You all right? Oh, Shanice, oh, yeah." You know, like, it's like if
They could have just melted and melted, they would have melted their way out there.
If you could have jumped into the ground, you would have jumped and vanished into the earth. So I remember going, "Oh, okay." And I looked at them dead in the eyes. I gave them the stare down of oof. I looked at all of them. And I went out. I didn't say bye to one person. I never told them I was leaving. I went out, got my stuff back from the cloakroom, and I left. And I said, I'm not going to let these people see me cry.
No,
I left. And I called my big sister and I just started crying. I said, "Masha, I can't do this. I don't like this country. I can't do it anymore. I can't take it. You know, what is this? This is mad. And if I had reacted, then I would be the bad person." Like, I was just telling her everything. And then one of them, who you could see she felt guilt on her face, she started ringing my phone profusely, like, "Oh," and then she sent me a message, "Oh, we're just checking that you're okay because we don't know where you've gone." Like, Listen, I don't need you lot's care. Thanks.
Did you respond to her? Did you air her on that one? Because that would have been.
I can't remember, so I don't want to tell a lie. I can't remember exactly, but I don't think I remember. I don't think I replied straight away. I think I did end up replying, but not immediately. I think I might have replied the following day or something.
Right.
But I can't remember entirely. But I just remember being on that bus, driving through Dalston, because the bus took me from Shoreditch to Dalston, and these times I was living in North London at the time. And I just remember driving on the bus, crying, talking about it to my sister, like, "I can't believe this. I need to leave here. I can't take it. You know, this is horrible, blah, 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 blah." And for me, I just felt like from there, I kind of got myself signed off from the doctors and was just trying to work from home, because I did not want to be around that environment, and I didn't want to be gaslighted, because ultimately that's what it was. It's like you feel something, or you feel you've experienced this, and you guys are making me feel like it didn't happen, or it's in my head, or I'm overly hypersensually emotional. But how is it that I've worked in how many other workplaces, I've never experienced this, and I've worked with a whole team of white people, so I know that what I was feeling and what I experienced was very real, and I felt uncomfortable, and I knew that it was a real experience for me, because even when I left, I sent a goodbye email to all of them, to everybody in my team, and only 2 people responded.
Wow.
So this is where I knew I wasn't going mad.
It wasn't going mad.
And it was the 2 women, one lady who was of Asian descent and the other black woman that I mentioned to you that worked. Other than that, none of them responded to me.
Disgusting. Absolutely disgusting. I'm so sorry you went through that, because that's a horrendous way to be treated. And then to hear that, I still feel like you handled that well by just saying hello, because I would have been opening the door saying, "What was you saying?" You know, because what? No, I am just super, like, even me hearing this now, I'm frustrated for you. I'm just like, what? Because I'm thinking of you being younger, and do you know what I mean? You're just trying to experience your first agency. And then I suppose one of the reasons why I kind of avoided agencies is because I was a young mum. So I had my daughter by the time I had started my work in the business. Like, my daughter, when I started at GMC, I already had my daughter here. And so I remember some of the managers there saying, "Ebony, you'd be really good to go agency." And I was like, no, what I've heard about agencies and my child and trying to see her at night time getting, you know, nursery pickups. At that point, I know now it's somewhat improved, but at that point I was looking, it was just like a no-go. So I had to make that decision of, well, I'm going to stay down this in-house route, because at least I know I can still manage to be there and be a parent and try and make it to her recitals and do these sort of things. Whereas I know agency is a bit different. But my point being is that you're young, you're trying to find your way, and you need support. And to think that these people going in there talking about using the collar card, and they have no recollection of your experience, what it's like living like us in our skin. It's just ignorance. It's just pure ignorance.
Yeah, it was a shock to hear them talk like that. But again, when you started to delve deeper, a lot of the people who were there, they came from like out of London, grew up in some sort of village. They've got the opportunity to come and work in you know, London, quite a multicultural society. Because I've even had to school people when they say, "Oh, half caste or quarter caste." It's like, I'm neither. I don't have one white parent, one black parent. I'm not half caste.
Even I know that term is so old school. That term is old school.
it's a disrespect, because when
It
I
is.
said, have you ever heard the story from the poem from Benjamin Zephaniah? Because if you
Yes.
have, you wouldn't say that.
Say that.
So go and educate yourself, because it means that that person is half formed. And I know that I'm of fairer complexion, but I'm Black. So again, it was about educating people who didn't understand or know what they're even talking on, and what that looks like.
Absolutely agree with you. Sorry to cut you, but what's so fascinating about that, as you said, as I said, it's old school. It just sends me back to like hearing it when I was younger. And I also remember thinking that's actually, as you got older, you start to realize this is just like a really offensive term. But it was something at that point, many years ago, it was just normalized. It was absolutely normalized. Just like certain racist things were normalized on English TV. My mum tells me about some shows and I'd be like, they said that on the show. It'd be like, yes, they said all kinds of like racist things on the show. It's only now, that they won't allow these things to happen. But if you go back 30 years or so, you'll see some stuff that'd be like, whoa, that wouldn't make it past anything right now.
This series is sponsored by the PRCA's Race and Ethnicity Equity Board. To learn more about REEB and its mentoring scheme, visit prca.org.uk/REEB.
So just goes to show that I just think it's interesting you say that. I just thought, that was a term that was used quite a lot. But yeah, it's
a white woman that said it. It was a white woman that said it. And I said to her, look, I'll just stop you right there. I said, I'm going to say this to you in the most kindest way possible. Don't ever say that term again. I said, you're lucky it's me. Because there's other women that probably wouldn't have turned around and given you that response. But I explained to her why it's not a good term to use and don't use it. And if you want to address somebody, just say they're mixed heritage or mixed race heritage. But you don't ever say, half caste or anything like that. And she was like really apologetic. She wasn't, she was really apologetic, and she explained, she did come from a little village out of London. She's never been around Black people or people of color. Her going to this was an experience I had in university. Her coming to university was like her first exposure to people of race, of like different races, basically. So it was like
in university, so I get that. I had a woman that I met at university who told me that I was the first Black person she ever met in real life. But she was one from some sort of European country. But I still feel like, okay, that's fine. Sometimes you don't know, whatever. But I do feel like there's a point at time where it's like, people just take responsibility for your what you're saying and not trying to sweep it under the carpet as, oh, it's unconscious or it's this. At a certain point, you have to realize that some things are offensive, and it's to me, it's just common sense, but I know common sense isn't common. So it's a frustration for me. But hearing things like that really drive me a little bit insane. But just to rewind slightly, so the agency that you worked at, after that incident with them saying about you using the race card and you overheard them, did you leave kind of not long after that? Was that kind of...
Yes, pretty much after that. So I feel comfortable speaking about it now. And this is why people like Jenny, Amanda, I say all of their names because I have to highlight them, and Julia, because they supported me. I was diagnosed with a mental health condition at the age of 23. Before that, I had always struggled with my mental health. I at that time had a serious breakdown. And I was diagnosed with borderline personality disorder, depression, anxiety, and PTSD. And it was something that, again, I didn't walk around with a plaque on my forehead saying I've got this. People would just assume, oh, she cries, she's hyper emotional, or she's off work for a while. How come she gets to work from home? Or it's because I was working at agency and I was running to go get my MBT treatment, or I was going to get my CBT treatment, or I had therapy, and I don't feel like working in the office surrounded by people now, when I've just had to cry for about 2 hours talking about traumas that affected me and shaped who I became. And so for me, working in that environment, it was starting to really take a toll on my mental health. And it was around the period where I had just kind of overcome this huge breakdown that I had. And I remember having a meeting with HR. The guy was so lovely. Again, I don't say their names to protect them, because not everybody at the agency was awful. There were some good people there, and he was one of them. And he pulled me into the room and he gave me a really good talk. And he said, "Shan, leave before they get rid of you, because you are someone that you speak up. You're like he basically told me in a plain man's words were, you don't belong here. So go before they get rid of you, literally." And I remember taking that on. Wonderful guy, and I thank him for even, he didn't have to, and he did. He took that time out and did. And I remember saying, do you know what? It's true. So I went away, I did some reflecting, and I came back and I handed in my notice and said, I don't think that this agency is for me. By this point, I had already been having conversations with my old boss at Vodafone anyway, because he at one period was mentoring me. And I explained to him what was going on. And this is a middle-aged white guy whose background is Oxford, or is it Cambridge? It's one of them. So again, complete background different to me, but there was a level of human connection and understanding and humility there. And I spoke to him. I remember us sitting in the cafe talking, and I was just telling him how awful it is. And I remember him saying, yeah, agencies are known for being little chicken sweatshops.
I've heard yeah, it's crazy.
So he said, don't worry. Yeah, it's crazy. Because when I was telling him the things that I was doing, working till 10 o'clock at night, signing off things, and, there's just so many different things that was transpiring. It was just like layers of things to why I wanted to leave. Yeah. And again, it's hard to be, especially in the PR communications industry, and you have mental health and have to hide, those feelings out of fear that they're going to discredit your work, out of fear they're not going to take you seriously. Like, navigating, being in that space, I think, especially early in my career, like now I know how to manage myself. Now I know when I'm feeling overwhelmed, how to say, okay, look, it's time for me to take some time off. Now I've got a strong level of self-awareness, but you can imagine with little guidance, little support,
on top of everything else you were dealing with at the time, not to add. I mean, that's a lot.
While I was at that agency, I had found out my nephew was diagnosed with cancer. I helped raise him. Like, there were so many different things I was juggling and dealing with at that time, that just mentally I was in such a low place. But again, these people don't care about you. You just work with them. So it's kind of like, I'm not going to divulge my entire life with you and what I'm experiencing. So I made the decision to leave, and that was the best decision for me. And I went back to what I always say, my Vodafone family. And they took me back in with open arms, and they supported me, and they were there, and they helped me. Like, honestly, if it wasn't for the patience of, my old bosses who saw the potential in me, understood that my start in life wasn't like necessarily everybody else's, and just took that time and grace, I would not be in where I am in my career now if it wasn't for those people. And I will forever be grateful for that, because a lot of people could have written me off. They could have been like, oh, she's always got something going on. Unfortunately, I did always have something going on in my life.
That's life sometimes.
When you are the rock of your family, when you come from such a, let's just say it, a very blended family. I've got a sister 3 months younger than me. You're never going to understand how my life is, or how it works, or how it operates. You're never going to understand being, again, I feel more safe and strong in who I am. So I'm more open to talk about it. Being a daughter of a deportee, my dad was deported. You don't know the effects it was having on me, having to come into work. My dad has been deported, and he shouldn't have been, and having to go through those feelings, and then being around this and the culture, and having to play the stupid games, and have to tone down your blackness because other people feel uncomfortable. If they are, all these different things. Now, not so much. I think when you hit over 30, you don't really care as much anymore. And I think start to become more assertive. I hear that it's great on the 40th floor.
Once you hit the 40th floor, you get to the point where you really don't give a damn. Okay.
Yeah.
So,
30s, it was just like everything changed for me. And I haven't looked back since. And of course, life isn't a field of dandelion and gold. Sometimes you have your ups and downs. Would I change anything? No, I wouldn't, because it's taught me a lot. Taught me a lot about myself, and taking accountability for myself as well. Like, what could I have done
differently?
What could I have changed? How should I
Well, pause on that, because I've got a question to follow you up on. Okay, so pause on that, okay? So moving on, okay, from that, because obviously that example is, you gave an example of witnessing it and seeing how it wasn't really handled very well, but you handled it well by removing yourself. But you also spoke up about, feeling comfortable to speak up and self-advocate, right? So I think that's really important. That's something that I definitely have taken away from chatting with you here. Now, I wanted to ask you about code switching. Now, do you feel like we can actually lead with our authentic voices in the workplace, or will we be forever code switching?
I think, you know what, to your question, I done that, the code switching, in the sense of I used to very much like, and it was Jenny turned around one day, Jenny Gray, and she said, why are you talking like that? And I said, oh, because, and I explained my reason. She said, no, Shanice, you're here because of who you are and how you are. She was just like, I don't want you talking like that. Can you talk how you talk, please? She literally just shut that all down. And it was that moment where I was like, maybe it's not so bad me just being myself, because I am a little bit quite, not a little bit, I'm outspoken.
Yeah.
I don't stand back for any injustice. I'm very vocal with how I feel about things. If I don't feel we're being treated fairly, I've got this sense of fairness, right? That I think I got, I think definitely from my dad. He's like a very fearless Jamaican man. I just feel like just naturally it's just in my DNA. Like if you meet my dad's mum, she is one of the faciest little old Jamaican ladies you could ever meet in your life.
Sounds like my grand. Mm-hmm.
So for me, it's just kind of like I've never been frightened of authority, but I respected it where it was necessary. So in terms of code switching, yes, I believe there's a level of etiquette you need to have in work environments. I believe it's important. But I don't believe in not being who you are to fit in, because then you're not being authentic to yourself, and then you're not being your true self. And there's only so long a mask can maintain. After a while, it's going to fall off. So if I'm like, hello, everybody, hello, how are you doing? And all the time, and then suddenly now you hear me talking a particular type of way, it's going to be like, whoa, what's happened to Shanice? What the hell is going on here? So for me, I found that balance, but it goes back to the same idea of my hair. I never always felt I remember the beginning stages of my career. Oh my gosh, I straightened my hair till my ends all died. I straightened my hair so much because I felt having my hair natural, it took away, people didn't take me seriously. And I felt like as well, when my hair was natural, people kept trying to like touch my hair or ask me stupid questions. So I felt it was just easier to have it straight. But something I missed out is when I went to uni first off to do the arts, I dropped out due to personal issues, and I decided to go and work. And I worked for a year for an oil engineering company that had contracts for BP and Shell. And I actually started my career in finance doing in the commercial. I was a commercial assistant, so I set up on payroll and things like that. Yeah, I was working there for a year and a bit. And it was in that environment, predominantly white men, predominantly men. I was like one of, say, 3 women in this entire floor and team of, like, as you can imagine, all men. This is an engineering oil company. And again, to be taken seriously, I had to have kind of like a certain tone and a certain look. So I kept straightening my hair. Now, when I look back at it, no, like I have my hair natural, straight, curly, wig, weave, ponytail, whatever I feel my vibe is going on at that time, I do it. But again, you're young, you're trying to make sense of the world. You've navigated through all this trauma. You've seen how if you're too pro-Black, you get kind of shut out. If you're not Black enough, you're classed as a coconut. It's all these different things you're navigating as a Black person. It's exhausting. It's like doing mental gymnastics. Sorry. Yeah, gymnastics. And it's like, how can I just want to be me. Like, I just want to be me. I don't want to keep talking about race. And it got to the point where it's like, I feel like that's all I'm doing. I'm literally proving my intelligence. And even today, it's happened to me more recently. I won't even mention where it was, but I went to an event quite known in the industry, and I was sitting next to 2 Polaroid different white guys. One beautiful soul, just got it, we clicked. He wasn't condescending, both very senior to me, being in the industry for 30 plus years. So lovely what we got on. The other guy, respectfully, he was quite condescending, kept shutting down every time I would speak, belittling when I would speak, and I could see and feel it happening. But I've got to a place in my career where I'm so comfortable in who I am and where I'm at that I'm like, I just let them talk, because I know it's your own self-ego. You do this to inflate your position and your power and what makes you feel, right. Because we were talking about the trajectory of, the PR industry, the direction that it's like in terms of how it's changing because of AI and what that looks like. And again, it's something I'm well read on, but
that's something that I'm coming back to you on as well. I've got a question about that too. Yes. Yeah. But go on, make it if I move you on.
Yeah, he started going off on, talking about all these books and whatnot. But again, when people start doing that, it's like you're trying to show me your IQ. And I've got to the place where now, and it's funny because to the other guy who was completely the opposite to him, me and him were talking about it, and I said, I remember especially when I first started the agency, I felt like everybody I met, I had to reel off my entire CV. So it's like I had to be like, I started my career.
Validate yourself. Yeah,
I almost had to validate myself. Now I don't really care. Like I really don't. I've been invited to Downing Street. I've met with leaders of the countries, ambassadors. I've sat with CEOs. I've sat with billionaires. Respectfully, if I didn't have the source or the intelligence or the integrity or the experience to even be here, why would I be entering into these spaces or these rooms?
You don't have to prove yourself to nobody. You don't have to prove yourself to absolutely nobody.
Like, I don't care. He gave me Eton vibes. I'm not Eton. Well, not all Eton people are like that.
But I know what you mean.
But he gave me Eton vibes. He came from a highly privileged family. From my understanding, he did come from a very privileged family of money. And so he just pretty much kept shutting down everything I was saying. So again, I was just like, okay, by that point I had tuned out and I couldn't wait for the conversation to finish. And then I had like exited.
Exit stage left. I hear that. That's really interesting though. So with the authentic voice, you believe that it's about being authentic with your voice in the workplace as well. So I think that's important. That's true. I think it's interesting with the code switching. I think that depending on who you speak to, I feel like those who are a bit older are kind of more
respect. You have a more etiquette.
Yes. Because I always say be yourself, but it's interesting because even like I laugh about it now, but growing up, my mum used to have her phone voice. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, we always
got the normal voice in the house, and I'm like,
it's in English.
They sound very different, okay? Do you know what I mean? One's Queen's English, the other one's a bit more relaxed. Do you know what I mean? So I think it's interesting. I think it's something that's come down from the elders who came from the Caribbean, who were told, "Oh, what? I can't understand what you're saying. Speak English, mate." You know what I mean? I think it comes from that type of attitude.
No, definitely. Because like what you said, my auntie and my grandma, they all done that. Like one of my aunties, she was the queen of that. Hello. But as soon as she comes off that phone, the rasp,
everything.
The suddenly
exactly. Same for my uncles. But I find it so hilarious. But I understand it because I'm like, because you guys came straight from Jamaica, you've got your accents, you had to switch in, and you had to like make it work. So I love it. It used to make me laugh. I think my uncle, he'd be like, he'd go straight into Cockney, mate. No. Next minute, he'd be like, why? No, you're not because. Do you know what I mean? So I love it. I love it.
And the next thing, and
exactly. I love it though. I think it's important. It's just part of our culture.
It shows all our different. Like for me, I get told a lot that my voice. I don't speak the Queen's English. I never will. But I get told that my voice is like I've got a mixture of different dialects in there. Like they can hear definitely the South is in me.
Yeah, I can hear the South in you.
I've now lived in East and North. I think
you probably picked up little bits as well from there as well.
And that's kind of coming when I talk. Sometimes it kind of pours out, but. To me, I love it because it shows my identity, it shows my journey, it shows my heritage in it. So it is what it is.
It does. Okay, so on to the racism or the colour bias in the industry, because you really alluded to it yourself already. When did you become aware of the colour bias? Was it like immediately in the in-house role, or was it when you came to agency world, or like when was it like, oh, this is really, really white industry for you? For me, it was more like coming along to a lot of the networking events like CIPR and all that kind of stuff. Because obviously I was in-house. So obviously, you're dealing with your colleagues. In my team, there was not any black people until much later. I was the only black person in my team and I was in management role. But I remember having black people across my organization that I could go and like talk to, and we have a little moments together. But yeah, once I started doing a lot more industry events, I just feel like it's a sea of white people, especially going to like women in PR. I remember just thinking, oh my Lord, it's literally a sea of white women in here. Like, it's literally looking at people of colour. I'll be like, oh, okay, there's one there.
I Spot Wally, we used to make jokes, me and my TBF peers, we used to be like, Spot Wally when we'd go to events. So like, Spot Wally would be the cue to be like, can you spot another black hook?
Exactly that.
Oh man, those days. I think you know what? For me, when I started, so I always say my first proper career job, that I acknowledge is Citibank. Citibank was so diverse, so eclectic. Like my team and as a whole was so diverse that I never saw none of these issues until after. So like in Vodafone, hardly any. Was there any? No, aside from me and Philip, no, there was no black people in the major corporate comms team. In the UK anyway. Aside from me and another person. No, the black people in the IT teams or
different departments.
PA, like the PA for the say head of department or whatever was black, but in the actual comms PR team itself.
It was still quite white.
Actually specialising, it was still quite white. But Citibank was really, really diverse. So I didn't see that in my actual public affairs team.
Day to day,
day to day. But it's like what you said. When I started going to these events more and started putting myself out, I'm just like, wow, this is really white.
Really
white.
The
same kind of people.
The same from certain universities background.
Same universities, same backgrounds. Like this is all the same. And I started to realize it would be like, oh yeah, this person's come over from Downing Street, or this person's come over from here, and they knew this person, so they've moved here. So again, it was all like it started to show me it's all who you knew. And then when I done the Taylor Bennett Foundation program, and we were visiting all the head offices and all the different companies and the different agencies in-house and so forth, it was just white. Everywhere we was going, it was just white. So I was just like, oh, okay, this industry really is white. This really is. And it was just like, that's when I started to really see like, okay. And then after that, that's when I started to really understand and recognize the significance and importance of TBF. And I think it was when you're sitting in rooms and you're hearing briefings, and then some of the ideas they come up with and they think it's actually a good idea. You're like, you actually think that's a good idea. And then you realize, okay, it's because there's a lack of. And the thing is, I think as well, like the concept of race, it's so deep. There's so many layers to it, because I always say there's two different things you're fighting. It's social economics and it's race. And if you have both of them, so much harder. Absolutely. So in the sense of, if you're a black person who came from a very privileged background, went to private school, you will face certain things, but it's not the same. You probably will, it's a lot more easier for you to get through certain doors because they see you as accomplished or you're different. They don't say it, but they feel, and I've seen it. But then you have people who say me, came from
come from an estate. Do you know what I mean? I came from accounts and estate. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's not the trajectory,
as they consider as the hood. And like I said, I didn't know PR and communications was a career path I could take. I remember the silly room that we used to go in, the career advice lady, and they're showing you health and social work. Nurse. Like, it was just all the predictable roles. I had absolutely no interest. I was never going to be a midwife. I can't stand the sight of blood. I was never going to be a social worker. I'm too passionate to be looking at cases where people are abusing children. So I couldn't do it. So all these type of things were like, these are not career paths for me. I can't do it. But again, the idea of PR, communications, media, none of this was kind of pushed as an opportunity or a career that I could take.
True, though.
So it was never. It was always just a traditional kind of.
I just kind of fell into my one.
Like a teacher
I actually
role.
wanted to do advertising because I used to like some of the crazy adverts. So I used to want to do advertising because I think, this is cool. There's like an old advert back in the day. I'm showing my age now. So like when it was like a tango advert and they had the thing, you'd be tangoed. And they slap you across the face. It's orange.
I remember that.
Do you remember that? I think now they see it as abusive because really the guy would like tap your face and run off and be like, you've been tangled. And the person's like, oh. But I just love those little crazy adverts. And I used to think I'm going to go into advertising. But then when I looked into advertising, not only is it's very white, but it's also just like ours. But also it put me off because it separated the creative and the client management side, which obviously PR gives you all of that. But you know, you had to choose one side. You can only be creative, or you could be that side. And I was like, I don't want to choose a side. I like this and I like a bit of that. Do you know what I mean? So then I found that PR kind of, you know, that middle ground for that, and you had a bit more control around the messaging. So yeah, I kind of went for that reason. But I want to move you on to, are you aware of the ethnicity pay gap within the industry? And what are your thoughts on that?
Oh, of course I am aware. Again, it's the thing is, I try not to go down the web too much.
Rabbit hole.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because then you become fueled with anger and you become fueled with frustration. Of course I'm aware of it. You know, I run an agency where I have organizations and brands that approach us and want us to work for free and test our services. You know, I've experienced these things where it's like my peer, who's of a lighter tone, will come along and, you know, this is what they charge and it's no problem. Here's a 50K budget to go and do what you need to do. And then here comes along the young Black woman and it's like, oh, that's a bit pricey. That's a bit expensive. Oh, like, you know, I've got to have a breakdown. What's the delivery? What's this? What's that? And it's just like, that's when you know this is a real thing that we're really dealing with.
It really is. It's really disgusting.
I've always felt. So of course I'm aware of it. My thoughts on it, I think it's disgusting. I think that people should be paid according to their role, their gifts, not their race, not their background, not their gender. It should be, can they do the job? Can they get results? Can they get this done? And if they can, and they've got the experience to match it, then of course they deserve that paycheck and they deserve to be on the salary they deserve to be on. I think society has become so consumed so much with division, with race, with social equity, like in terms of your background. It's almost like they use that now as their just to do certain things. So it's like even them, oh, we want to create this and do this fund. You know, we saw it after George Floyd. Everybody wanted to do something. Now we see in recent years they've peeled it all back, and it shows you that everything was so disingenuous because they know what they're doing is wrong, but they choose to turn the other cheek because as far as they're concerned, there's bigger issues going on in the world. So, you know, let's be honest. And this is what I used to say. I used to see it a lot. In this country, they care more about cats and dogs than they do about people of color.
Absolutely. My mum says that all the time.
And I realized that as I got older, because it's like the passion, they would go out in their hundreds and thousands. You know, my gosh, they're killing cats. God forbid. And I love cats. I've got one myself. But you know what I mean? But it's just like the care. It's almost like, and this is the vibe I've got when I've had some conversation. It's like, oh, this again. You know, it's kind of like, oh,
I get what you mean. But you see, even on LinkedIn, you can see where the conversation seems to be moving away from that. And people like Elon Musk out here talking about, you know, DEI, we should get rid of it all and all that kind of stuff. So like you said, the black squares, for me, I just felt like, you know.
I've never been like I said, contrary to it all, I am proud, Black and proud. If you meet my family, you understand why I'm the way I am. But one thing I don't do is I don't feed into the wider agenda. So the black squares, I had no interest in it because to me, it's a 2-minute solution for 200 years of torture and trauma. For me, I'm a solutionist, and I always say this. The reason I set up my agency, that was one of the reasons. The lack of equity, the women in leadership, especially as Black women, and also future talent. The fact that I didn't know that this could have been a career path for me, I've set this up as a legacy to my daughter. Like, this is an opportunity that you can take hold of. This, we're providing equity and opportunity. I don't really talk about it too much, but most of the people who have ever worked for me have been young Black women. Currently, my staff is young Black women that I pay to work a part of Kallure. Like, for me, that's important for me. I'm not going to sit here and pretend to be doing things and then I want to be glorified for it. I'm actually creating opportunities that I know are going to empower my community, empower the women of my community to really know that this is for you. You deserve to be here. This is a space you deserve to be in. And I'm not going to come here, like I say, my famous line, and anybody who's met me from corporate to the roads, I've always said it. I don't come there in a begging bowl, and I'm not the poster black kid that you think you're going to be using. I will only participate if I feel there is a level of genuinity there. But I'm not going to be a TikTok exercise. I will not. I refuse to.
Because I've had to learn that the hard way in terms, like I've had experiences where I definitely was being used as a token, and I definitely called it out because it was at quite a high profile. It was one of the women in PR annual GMs, and I got asked, what have I done to improve ethnicity for the membership? Excuse me. So just because I'm the black girl, am I supposed to be like the Pied Piper and bring everybody in? Like, so no, I wasn't here to be the poster child. So, you know what I mean? So I was just like, okay, no, I'm not happy about that. I came on to actually definitely make a change, but don't turn around and say this is like a black issue. It was that question was put towards me and to Sarah. So the black and brown people that were in the room, that were on the board at the time. And looking at it now, I know that after I came off the Women in PR board, like I was the first black woman on that board. Look how long they have been around. But then look at what they just done the other day with this whole mentoring.
I saw that.
I put out a statement about that because I was just quite disgusted by it. I'm just like, I tried to, help you guys before, and this is what you're doing now. And yeah, again, not very happy about that. Another conversation. But anyway, I'll move us on to that. So allyship. What are your thoughts on allyship? And what do you think is like a good example of allyship? I feel like you've given me a couple, actually, to be fair. I feel like you've given me one, the couple of the workers that you mentioned that were quite supportive. And even your mentor that kind of brought you in, and Citygate lady.
All my mentors have been white. And that is so
different about allyship.
I found it really hard. Only in later years, I've been able to connect with women who are black, who I can now call mentors. Do you know what I mean? However, in the early stages of my career, it was all white people who genuinely did, that wanted to have change in the industry and weren't doing it for a tick box exercise. And I say this because Dave even said it to me, pulled me aside and said, Shanice, you are not the poster black kid.
Mm-hmm.
So do not do that.
Yeah.
You are here because of your talents. You are here because you're gifted. You are here because you are a bloody good comm specialist. That's why you're here. Let's not, like, they would say that to me. So in terms of allyship, it's definitely a real thing. I feel like there are people that are real. There are people that genuinely care. There are people that want change. Mm-hmm. But again, we need to look at it in the kind of bigger picture. In this, what I say is, why would you change something that benefits you?
True story.
So when we are screaming and shouting to be heard, to be understood, oh, please let us in to your organizations, why would they want to change something that ultimately benefits them? And so this is where I say the idea of proactivity and solution kind of based. We understand the biggest issue that the war that they did against, I would say, the black communities is the lack of financial literacy and understanding and access to wealth. Mm-hmm. And this is something that has stemmed from the beginning of time. We see with VC
by design. That's all by design. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. When you look at VC funding, only 0.02% of black women get funding. That is less than 1%. That is crazy. Absolutely. So, when I sit down and I think about allyship, to me, allyship is people who really care, that really genuinely want to change things, even though they know that right now the system is in a place or a way that ultimately benefits them. Mm-hmm. But when you look at the statistics of organizations that are more diverse, you see what it does on the profit. You see what it does on the company. It shows with diversity, inclusion, and equality, you can see people thrive, you can see environments thrive, you can see business better. For me, my thoughts on allyship, I do believe it's real. I do believe there are some people, but I just think you need to trust your gut. A lovely lady that I know who I respect and admire, Diane, she said it to me, you need to trust your gut. Her background, again, PR, she's very senior in this industry. She's made her own pathway, and I would consider her a mentor too. She has dropped some gems on me over the years that I've known her now, and she said you need to trust your gut. If you know this is for you and you feel it and you know that person is, then you pursue it. If you know and you can feel it's not, and you feel it where it's coming from and that place it's coming from, then cast it aside. And I think that's what I've done with all the kind of relationships I have. There are some I feel have used me when it's beneficial to them. Do I regret it, or am I upset, I should say, by it? In the beginning I was, but now it's like I just accept the world that we live in. I just have to accept the world that we live in, because if I'm constantly angry or offended or upset, you're going to literally put yourself in the ground. So for me, I've got a daughter, I'm not going to sit here and try to understand everybody's way of thinking, because let's be honest, people in today's world are so led by ego, so led by their own praise. They people thrive with it. And this has always been a big issue with the rise of social media. People thrive off their own egos. And so it's exhausting to kind of try to understand everybody's, what it is that they want to get out of this situation and what it is they're trying to get from me. So I just try to block it all out and just get on with it.
So what motivates you and what inspires you to keep on going in your career?
What motivates me, God, contrary to the fact that they're trying to take God out of society and make the world a crazy place. God inspires me, is that my number one motivator in all that I do. He's my rock, my beginning and my end. And my daughter, I would say, it's my daughter. I say this all the time. My daughter saved my life. If I didn't have her, I don't think I'd be here. And that's just me being very honest. She grounded me. She gave me purpose. She gave me direction. She made me see the world in a nicer lens, because I wanted to see the world in a better lens for her. And it's funny that you say this, because I'm going to be dropping an article today. I've had to have the race conversation with my daughter at 6, because this is how much the world has changed from when I was growing up till now, because of something she's had to recently experience. And so for me, I think those are my biggest motivators in life, God and my daughter. But I think in terms of motivation, it has to be my grandparents, and the legacy. My grandparents raised me. They were all my grandparents who have come from Jamaica, all hardworking individuals, but the two who raised me in particular left a huge impact on my life. I would not be who I am if it was not for my grandfather, my grandmother. They instilled in me so many principles that I don't even know. Like, when I look at people's behavior today, I'm just like, wow, I feel sorry for you. Like, how was you raised? And it's so crazy, because I went from, I wish I had mommy and daddy and the picket fence and the traditional family and we were all together, to now it's just like, thank you, Lord, hallelujah, that I grew with my grandparents. Because when I see some of the behaviors and what's going on in society, I just think, I'm good, I'm blessed. They motivate me to be better. I think about my aunts, my uncles. Ultimately, it's my family, it's my lineage. They motivate me, because it's like, I'm not going to make all your hard work, everything you have done, all what you've endured, all the abuse, the suffering, everything you've had to go through, to go in vain. And so that is my motivation. Like, I have to succeed. There's no ifs, buts, maybe. I will succeed. I'm going to succeed.
You're doing amazing.
My grandparents, thank you. My grandparents are my motivators, and that's it. Literally.
I love that. So what would you say you found the most challenging on your journey so far?
The biggest challenge I've had so far on my journey is my mental health. Your mind, I think, for me. The thing is, people are
touch on mental health a little bit in a minute as well, so carry on. That's a good very honest answer.
No, it's my mind. You're your biggest enemy.
Absolutely.
People can have opinions, people can say hurtful things, people can judge you based on the color of your skin, but ultimately it's what you know about yourself that will determine your path and where you're going, isn't it? So for me, I think my biggest challenge in my life, which has always been, has been myself. because my own mind has always held me back, whether it's the imposter syndrome, whether it's the past traumas, whether it's am I good enough? It's all the different things. And once I started to do the work on myself, I realized just how much I've been my own enemy.
Yeah.
You know, because there's only so much people can do to you if you allow them to, if that makes sense. Yeah, I think that's been my biggest hurdle, and something I still battle with now. But
I think that's part of the human journey. But you think that's the human journey, like your biggest competition is yourself, essentially, and your mindset. So I agree with you completely on all of that. Like, I'm big on that mental health stuff and mindset and empowering yourself, all that kind of stuff, because
I'm not a victim. I'm not a victim.
Not a victim, but it's also just knowing that also it's okay to just have days when you don't feel okay. That's okay. We're human.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like, it's all those things, you start judging yourself. Oh, I should be doing this. I should be doing that. I should be doing that. But actually, no, maybe you just need to relax for a minute and get back onto it. Like, it's urgent things into it.
It's urgent.
This industry, everything's urgent. Yeah,
everything's
urgent in this industry. It's just like, well, no, if there's no life or death situation, it is not that urgent. Like, it's okay.
Honestly, and everything can wait. And I think that's what I've learned as well. Is like having my daughter has slowed me down, and I was kind of like, oh my gosh, but now it's like, no.
And I think everything has enjoy that slowdown with the daughter, because trust me, my daughter's like she's 22 now. Okay. So I remember when she was
22, where?
22. And so now I remember her when she was 6 and stuff. And and I know the time, it flies like crazy. She's at your daughter's at primary school, so that's great. Like, I feel like primary school goes a bit slow. When they hit secondary school, it's like it's crazy.
Yeah.
But enjoy it. I think there's no harm in slowing things down. I think that's a great answer. What do you want from your employer when you're thinking about, obviously you're a business owner now, but with your employee hat on, what to you would make a good working environment? Or if you don't look at it that way, you can look at it with your business hat on now. What kind of, what do you put in place now to ensure you have a good working environment?
I think for me, for a really good working environment is having clear lines of what expectations are for anybody coming into the business. I think creating a healthy environment by having clear communication in terms of processes, how things work, the kind of culture you want within the business and in the organization, I think is really key. Yeah. I think in the beginning, this idea, a family, no, it's a business. You need to understand the kind of culture that you want to build there. Is it an honest culture? Is it a transparent culture? Is it a culture where we listen, we collaborate effectively, looking at all the different things you want. I think as an employer, it is fundamental in the sense of what does success look like to you as a business. And I think it goes back to, what are you trying to achieve? Is it, to be the biggest agency in the world? Is it to have the biggest numbers? What is it that you're trying to generate? And I think when you understand what the ultimate goal is, you start to build the environment around what those goals look like. And I think for me as an employer, I think it's honesty, it's integrity, it's proactivity, in the sense of just thinking outside the box. You might not always have the answers, but just thinking, okay, how can I be proactive and actually get a solution here? I think for me is respect. I think that's really key, is just respecting one another, whoever they are, whatever their cultural background is, whatever their race is just having a sense of respect. I think these are kind of fundamental key points. If I was, as an employer, and if I was going to go and work for someone, that I would look for. The kind of culture do they breed there?
That's a good point. No, I think that's a very good point. And what do you think? What does diversity inclusion look like for you?
Diversity and inclusion for me,
or equity and inclusion, because I quite like the equity part. I think that's an important part.
Yeah, I like the equity. I love the equity. Well, that's what Kallure is all about, equity. I think those three key things, I think what it looks like for me is successfully integrating society where we no longer see who and where everybody is. It's just respecting people for their individual character. And I think once you have created an environment where we can celebrate one another without there being contention of the indifference, I think that is what successful D&I look like for me, personally.
Yeah.
Because I think a lot of the time, again, it's going back to like the smoke and mirrors. A lot of people do things because it sounds and it looks good, but is it successful within your organization?
Yeah.
That is the question you need to ask. Have they, has everybody integrated successfully? Is there a clear team there where everybody's connected, whether there's indifferences there? Just being able to say, oh, I've got a D&I leg or arm to my business, to me means nothing.
Yeah, not unless it's actually embedded and you see the fullness of it. I can get you on that. Okay, well, moving into your proudest moments. What would you say has been like your proudest moment? It could be work or personal, and maybe throw in a career highlight as well.
Oh, wow. You know what? I got told the other day I don't celebrate myself enough. Because I don't like talking too much. I like the irony. I like talking with people, but I don't like talking too much about what I'm doing and where I want to go and what I'm working on and whatnot. Because I just feel like, your work should talk for itself, kind of thing. But in terms of highlight, well, definitely I would say becoming a mother. It was one of my proudest moments because I think it changed me. I think everybody that knows me prior now will say, yeah, Shan has completely changed, transformed. She's had her daughter. It made me a lot mentally stronger. But in terms of career highlights, there is a few. Oh, they're so...
Give me one of them. Give me one of your highlights. Well, so your proudest moment we know is your daughter. That's great.
Do you know what? I'd say more recently, I might as well just go with the more recent ones. I think I would say, well, two. I would say that was a while ago, that one. But the most recent one, I would say the BEO in Sky. That was a highlight for me in my career because I wasn't going to apply because, again, imposter syndrome overtook me. And I was just like, oh, I'm not going to get it anyway. So what's the point? I'm not going to apply. Like, I can't be bothered. And 3 different people who don't talk to each other of my friends, they sent it to me. I was like, Shan, you should apply for this. I think you should really apply for this.
What was it called? Get it. What was it called? The
BEO and Sky Fund, the F100 fund.
Oh, amazing. Okay. Right.
So 2 years ago now, I was one of the first on the cohort to receive funding from that whole.
Amazing. That's something to be definitely proud of. That is definitely a proud of.
Yeah, I was very proud of that. That was a highlight of my career because I was just like, oh my gosh. And the lady who now is CEO of BEO, I remember saying, like, it was a really passionate interview. And I was just kind of like to myself, if I don't get this, I'm going to quit Kallure. I'm over. I can't do this no more. Like, I'm not going to do it. And I was just like, then when I got the email that I got, I was like, oh. And then I made it onto the program. I done it. Me, 20 other businesses. I got to meet some amazing other peers. And yeah, now I've made some lifelong friendships now of that program itself, and I got funding. So it was just a hand-in-hand highlight. Yeah. And another highlight I would say was going to Downing Street to advise about like social equity amongst young people of color and what that looks like, coming from the backgrounds that we come from and why certain programs are really significant and important for Black and brown people. I think that was another highlight for me. Little old me from Brixton gone to Downing Street.
Yeah, that's good stuff. So, I like that. I love that for you. Okay, well, that's really nice. So you touched on this a little bit earlier, but I wanted to get your thoughts on how you think the industry will evolve over the next few years. Obviously, you touched on AI, hence why I said we'll come back to that. So what are your thoughts on how the industry is going to evolve? We know AI is going to play a massive part. It already is. What do you think?
Well, we've seen the industry evolve, haven't we? I remember back in the day when you used to have to write press releases and scan it over and do this and that. And now it's completely changed. Yeah. And now it's completely changed where social media, people are cutting back budgets and applying more behind social media and what that looks like. And it's kind of transformed as well the way that we do PR. PR is no longer releasing a press release and just hoping to get some journalists in a room to write about your product or the person or whoever it is that you're working on. PR now is much more, it's about building community. And so social media has shifted that completely. I think as this continues to grow, I think PR it's always going to remain. I don't believe our industry will ever die, ever. It's just going to evolve in the way of how we execute it. And that's why I say AI comes into it. I think AI is going to transform the way we do things, but I don't think it's going to take away how we do it in the sense of that human connection. Because let's be honest, right? Let's be honest. You can tell press releases that I believe in using AI to a degree. I think to help you with research, to kind of get the skeleton down of what you want, things like that. But I feel like there's an element you can tell when things are just all AI or AI written, and so you need that humanistic connection. So I feel like there's going to be an evolution there, just in terms of how we use AI within the PR industry and sector. I can see like departments maybe shifting as well how they do it, because they might incorporate a bit more, especially from the research element side and what that looks like. True. And so therefore they can provide much more upsell products now. Whereas before it's kind of that traditional PR and so forth, but now there's like an element where they can now start to be much more tailored to different individual clients. I see that happening. And like I said, I feel like social media has changed the PR landscape, as we know, influencer marketing, kind of different things that have transpired over time, and ultimately they all fall under PR and communications, even though it influencer marketing. But we know, I always say it, when people try to say, like, ask me to explain the difference between PR, marketing and advertising, I say they're all cousins pretty much. They're cousins. They're literally cousins, because marketing uses data, advertising uses data, but PR is the humanistic approach that connects all that data together and builds the story and the bubble that kind of surrounds all of those things. So I think that is how I see the industry kind of evolving and changing. But I do think we will always remain, because people connect to people.
Yeah, I get what you mean on that. Absolutely. Okay, well, thank you for that. What are some 3 key lessons that you've learned throughout your career?
Oh gosh. 3 things that I have learned. I would say one of the, but then I wouldn't say it's necessarily a lesson. I would say just that learnings that I've taken from working in this space. I think the first one is just be true to who you are and maintain connections. I think it's something that I've learned. Maintaining relationships, even if you drop a message, just seeing how you're doing, how you are, let's touch base, I think is really, really important. That's something that I've learned in my career. Even at times I'm thinking maybe I should have done a bit more of that. Just kind of maintaining the relationships that you have, because it's so important, especially within this space that we're in. I think another lesson is, this is a lesson, definitely a lesson that I've learned. Just don't be hard on yourself. You make mistakes and it's okay. And nobody in this industry is perfect. Absolutely no one, from the top right to the bottom. Nobody's perfect. Everybody's just trying to make an understanding of who they are in this world. And they're trying to be the best at what they do in their respective fields. So I think for me, just don't be too hard on yourself. If I could go back to my younger self and say to Shanice in her early 20s, girl, just stop being so hard on yourself. Perfection isn't real, and you need to get it together, innit? Really. Just go and enjoy it and live. That's the second thing. Because I definitely have been too hard on myself. I think this year's the first year I've actually been like, okay, wow, I've actually done all of this by myself. I didn't have parents. I didn't have help. I didn't have, some rich auntie that was helping me somewhere. I've always kind of felt like I've always said this, I'm a popular loner, where it's like, I know a lot of people gravitate to me. but I feel lonely in this space.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've never felt like, oh, one of the cool girls in the industry, if that makes sense. So it's kind of like I've just navigated and made sense of it. And I think my final lesson, what I could take away, it kind of ties into the previous one that I would say is just don't have any regrets. You can't change what's happened. I think just keep learning. The industry is evolving, so learn as it evolves. Just do the best you know how, and just have no regrets. I think that's one of my biggest things, is that I pondered too much of coulda, woulda, shoulda. I should have just focused on what I needed to focus on, and I think that I would have got a lot further had I. But constantly putting that chip on my back. But again, it goes back to what we spoke about of, you know, when did you realize your race? When did you realize your indifference? When did you, all of these things that we carry, like Erica Badu says, bag lady, I was carrying those bags. I was carrying, and it's not, honestly, I didn't realize what that song meant until an adult. I used to sing that song as a kid, like, hey, lady, like,
yes.
And it's not until as an adult, I'm like, yo, she was saying, put down the stuff, just put it all down. You're carrying way too much, and back is hurting. So I think carrying all of that, I think, yeah, if I could turn back, even though I wouldn't, if I could and tell Shanice, okay, don't regret, honestly, just keep learning and just keep moving forward.
That's good advice. That's good advice. Now, what advice would you give to young people of colour that are trying to enter the industry?
What I would say to them coming into this space, expect bullshit and do not be discouraged by it. Do not be disheartened by it, but look at your indifference as a superpower to navigate and be the best you can at what you do. When you are the best at what you do, then nobody can question your value. And I think another thing I would say to young people coming into the industry, I would say, is get a mentor, get somebody who's been there, understands, knows what this is about, knows the game, and they can provide wisdom to you in moments that you don't understand. Because I know when I was younger, I was a lot more temperamental than I am now. You couldn't say anything to me straight away. I'd be like, sorry, like, Now, as being older, I would think twice before speaking. Of course, I would address them, still very much Shanice, that hasn't changed. But I'll sit on it, might think about it a day or two, and then I'll come back and be like, hello, could I have a word with you? Whereas in that time, I'd be like, X, Y, Z. And having a mentor to be able to share those experiences, you're not going to feel strange coming into this space, feeling, oh my gosh, I don't have a clue of what's going on. And I think the final thing, piece of advice I would say is just be kind, be honest, and be kind. I think people in life, again, we live in a world where it's good versus evil. And it's either, do you want to be on the side of good or do you want to be on the side of evil? Don't go in what I call the oppressor mentality, where it's like, I want to be the best, I want to be at the top, it has to be me. Come in there, be kind, be thoughtful, be considerate. Everybody's got their own shit going on.
That's fine.
Everyone's got their things in life. Everybody's got their own things going on in life, and sometimes just don't. To add on to that final piece of advice, just don't take things personal. Understand that everybody's navigating, and I think that as well is what I've tried to do, especially in recent years, is recognizing not to take things personal and understanding that everybody's just trying their best, the best way they know how. And I think that I learned through learning how to forgive my parents for what I felt towards them. Was just understanding that, you know what, take into account my dad came here in his 20s, you know, taking into account my mom growing up in the 60s. What did they enjoy? What did they experience? How did that shape them? I think just understand and just be kind.
Yeah, I think that's really nice. That's good advice. That is good advice. And as you mentioned mentoring, I will flag that. Obviously, there are lots of mentoring schemes that are out there. There's the PRCA has one, and they've got one that they call PRISM, Public Relations, Inclusion, Support and Mentoring. So if anyone out there looking for a mentor, look into that. And you've also got UK Black Comms Network, which also does sort of mentoring and stuff like that as well.
Oh, I love them. UK
I was going to say, who do you
Network.
go to for support and peer, like support group or peer group, industry support? Where do you go? Are you a member?
So for me, I've got a really good relationship with Kamika that started the UK Black Comms relationship UK Black Comms Network. So I definitely I tap her if I need counsel. I tap Winita. There's a number of different women in this space that I tap, but in terms of like my peer-to-peer, TBF, my alumni, we still have our WhatsApp group. So
That's
anytime
so
I
nice.
feel stressed,
yeah,
we still, how many years? 9 years later it's been. We still are in touch. You know, I'm going to one of their weddings in a couple weeks.
Oh, that's so
We're
nice.
very much in each other's lives. So anytime I have any questions or anytime I'm feeling a bit low and I'm just like, oh, I'm over it, we'll all write in the group. So there's a number of different like networks I can tap into, BEO being one of them. Again, I've got quite a great relationship with quite a few of my peers that have gone through the BEO program. Again, like I said, it's all about relationships. And so these are the people that I will turn to and I will be like, okay, hey, like, you know, 3 people in particular, I just want to say their names because they really helped me this year. Just by the conversations we had, and I think they didn't even realize. Definitely Kamika. We had a serious conversation. We went to eat, and she said something to me that just stuck with me Winita, I was on the phone to her, kind of just telling her my grievances, and she gave me like some next level Martin Luther King / Malcolm X speech that again made me kind of go away and reconfigure. And then definitely Josephine, remarkable woman. She's a strategist. Again, kind of come from the media background, TV kind of background. 3 remarkable Black women who took the time out, more senior than me, got more experience than me, to help give me that counsel, that wisdom and that guidance, and not make me feel bad about the decisions or how I am and how I convey myself. So yeah, I would like to say definitely it's all about relationships, connecting them and building long-term relationships, not I always say not temporary for what you think you need at that time, but for long-term relationships.
I agree with you on that. Thank you. So moving into the last couple of questions that we got, last few. So mental health, the mindset, right? So how do you deal with that sort of internal mind war, and how do you manage self-limiting beliefs?
I would definitely say God. It's God. Reading the scripture, seeking the word, I think has helped me, especially in recent years. I know not a lot of people these days are proud to kind of scream that that is their anchor. But for me, I would not be here if I was not sustained by the will and the way of God. That is what has given me a level of peace to some degree in my mind. And I would just say, surrounding myself with good people. I believe in recent years, I've cut out a lot of weeds, what I call it. It's people that they were in your life at that time for that chapter, and you've moved past that chapter now. So I've surrounded myself with like-minded individuals, people that uplift, that are honest, that will pull me up if I make mistakes and make me know you need to be accountable, but they won't tear me down. See, there's a difference with correcting someone's pathway and tearing them down. You can tell me I've been wrong. You can tell me where I need to go right without demoralizing me.
And that's what I find so interesting about our industry, because that's what we're about. We're about communicating. It's not necessarily it's about what you say and also how you say it. And that's 100%. What you're basically saying, right? Because just like the examples you gave earlier, like there's things where you think, what, the way he said it, the things that he said were just really great on you, where there's things that you can say in terms of giving someone feedback in a constructive way. So I get where you're coming from. I agree with that.
Yeah. So yeah, for my mental health and journaling and solitude. For me, I write a lot. Like I write out my thoughts. If I don't, I'd probably be on Channel 5 News. So yeah, I write my thoughts out a lot. And solitude, I think finding peace in just being with myself. I think a lot of people aren't comfortable with who they are. That's why they need loads of people around them. Whereas, like I say, I'm the popular loner because yes, I know a lot of people. Yes, I get on with people, but I enjoy my own company. Like I genuinely can turn up by myself and enjoy me.
Mm-hmm.
And I think when you can do that, then you've literally hit another optimal level of your mind, because it's like, wow, I'm okay with being by myself. I enjoy this peace, this solitude. So when I start to feel like I'm becoming overwhelmed or things aren't making sense, I literally just shut down and I go into solitude. Like, I need to hear me. I need to hear my voice now.
Yeah.
What is it telling me? So yeah, that's how I kind of manage my mental.
That's good. That is good. I appreciate you sharing that. So looking back over your journey, would you do it all over again?
Do you know what? I'm just going to say yes, because God makes mistakes with our paths.
Yeah.
And you know, I am perfectly imperfect. And if I didn't have the journey I had, I would not be Shanice Hoo Mills. So for me, would I do it all again? Yes. My life has been eclectic. It has been I always say my life has been a movie. If you like, you only touch on the surface of the things that we enjoy, but my life hasn't been traditional. It hasn't been the most smooth sailing. But I wouldn't change not one chapter of my story.
I love that for you. I think that's great. That's a good. That's what we want to hear, really, because, like you say, all your experiences have brought you to where you are now. So, really important. So, the last two questions. One being, what's the best and the worst advice you've been given? Because sometimes I hear some really funny pieces of advice. I'm just like, like I had one. I think it was Jennifer Thomas who said to me, someone told her that she needs to be more assertive, more aggressive. It's like a black woman got to get told to be, you know, that you don't want to be doing that. Do you know what I mean? It was like, it might work for you as a white person. For a black person, being aggressive doesn't necessarily work for us. But yeah, go for
it. Best piece of advice that I have received.
Best and worst. Yeah.
There's been so many. Oh my gosh, I'm trying to think. I think the best advice, one of the things that Jenny said to me in the beginning of my career, she just said that I just need to be me. I think that was the best advice I ever had, because like I said, I went into, Citibank. This is like a humongous corporation. And I felt like I needed to speak like this and I needed to be like this. And I think that was the best piece of advice. And I never let go of it, because it was just like, if Jenny Gray's saying this, girl, I ain't gotta listen to any of y'all. I'm good. So I think that was the best. Yeah, do you get what I mean?
It stuck with you for life as well. So I think that's a great piece of advice. And it helped you just your authenticity. So you're like, you know what, I don't need to do this. So that was great advice.
That was the best piece of advice. You should just be you, like she said, just be who you are. And I think that's what I did. And I think that's why people say they like me. I'm likable, so it must be working. I thank God. It's God is the one that gave me the sauce. So
exactly. Thank you, Most High, for the sauce. So what about the worst?
You know what? I'm trying to think, but you see,
if you haven't had any bad advice, and that's okay.
I was going to say I don't seek wisdom from fools.
No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying that sometimes people give you.
No. In general, like so even when people will say, like, say if somebody comes to give me advice and I think it's bad, I'm not gonna like take it on board, if that makes sense.
Yeah, you just let it go.
Because it's like I just let it go. So I can't even recall. I'm trying to think of a piece of advice that I thought, what utter rubbish, and then I suddenly no, do you know what I mean? Like I'm trying to think, but
if you can't think of anything, don't worry. Because my last question for you, that's okay. That is okay. So my last question for you is, do you have any rules that you've implemented to help you along your career journey?
My top 3 rules: self-respect.
Yeah.
I give respect, so I expect respect back.
Mm-hmm.
I've got a very strong line in the sand with that. Respect is a transactional thing.
Mm-hmm.
So I expect respect. That's something I've always walked with in my career. I think never compromise my integrity and who I am as a Black woman. I think that's my second thing. If it does not align with my beliefs and what I stand for, I separate myself from it, or I just be quiet. Sometimes saying nothing is better than speaking on things you have no, what's the word? You've got no right to partake in. You know, I think today we live in a world where everybody wants to get involved in conversations and debates and what's right and what's wrong. And I've just learned I won't compromise myself by inserting myself in conversations that don't have nothing to do with me. Yeah. I think that's the second thing. And I think the final thing that I've always, I think that's even before career, I think from when I came from the womb, was fearlessness. Have no fear. I've never been afraid, like I said, of authority. I've never been afraid to say to my manager, well, I don't agree with that. You know, I've never been afraid to tell my director, well, I don't think that's true. And if I'm wrong, I will totally hold up my hands and apologize. But if I'm right, then I'm right. So for me, I think those were my 3 things I've never, ever faltered on. And I come from old school lineage, man, where like my grandparents raised me differently to like my peers. So I'm not like, and this is what it was my uncle that made me realize that. He said, Shanice, you need to understand, you're not raised by my generation. You're raised by the generation that raised us. So you were always going to be different.
Yeah.
It's a huge difference.
Yeah.
Huge difference. So yeah, I think that's my kind of, non-negotiables.
I appreciate you sharing those. And I will say that when you're saying about, you know, the being fearless, I'm sure I will say that this is down to our Jamaican blood. Let me just say that, okay? That's what
out of all the Caribbean, we were the most
rebellious, right? You know, so I think that's still in the blood. But no, thank you so much, Shanice, for coming on and sharing your journey and your story with us. Like, I've really enjoyed talking to you. It's been really, really lovely. Now, if people want to get in touch with you, where can they find you?
So I am on LinkedIn, Instagram, and X, and TikTok now. I've actually joined TikTok. Still yet to post on there, but you can find me, Shanice Mills, on Instagram, TikTok, and X, and then LinkedIn. It's Shanice Hoo Mills. So yes, that's where you can find me.
Brilliant. Thank you so much for joining us today. So that has been our Gems in Comms series with Shanice Hoo Mills. So like I said, if you want to keep in contact with her, you can hit her up on LinkedIn, Instagram, and all the socials. Thank you for tuning in. I will be back with some more wonderful people from the world of comms very, very soon. Stay tuned. And thank you so much.